Good evening, and welcome to Truth Report. I'm Alex Truth, and tonight we are covering a jam-packed global news cycle that touches everything from massive land deals in Hong Kong to flying taxis beaming internet from space.
And I'm Maya Clarity. We've got 5 stories tonight that, on the surface, look completely unrelated. But stick with us, because by the end of this broadcast, you're going to see the threads connecting billion-dollar real estate plays, electric vehicle crashes, geopolitical chess matches, and a wheel loader parked at a gas station.
We're starting tonight in Hong Kong, where the government just announced a land sale program that could reshape the city's housing landscape. Then we're heading to the skies, where Archer Aviation and SpaceX's Starlink are teaming up to put satellite internet inside flying air taxis.
From there, we dive into the complex and shifting power dynamics between India, Afghanistan, and Pakistan under Taliban rule. Then we've got a story that every EV skeptic needs to hear, about what actually happens when an electric vehicle gets into a serious crash.
And we close with a story that might just be the most symbolic image of the energy transition we've seen all year. An electric wheel loader, a machine that weighs several tons, charging up at a Circle K convenience store. Let's get into it.
Our first story tonight comes out of Hong Kong, where the government has just unveiled its land sale program for the 2026-27 financial year. According to reporting from the South China Morning Post, authorities are putting 9 residential sites on the block for private developers.
9 sites. And those 9 sites are projected to yield approximately 6,650 new flats. Now, that number by itself might not sound earth-shattering, but here's where it gets interesting. When you combine those government land sales with other supply channels, including urban redevelopment projects, private development applications, and railway-linked properties, the total potential supply of new housing units is estimated to hit around 22,580.
And that figure, Alex, represents an 8-year high in potential flat supply. The highest since 2018. That is a significant milestone for a city that has been grappling with one of the most severe housing affordability crises on the planet for decades.
Let's put this in context. Hong Kong has consistently ranked as one of the most expensive housing markets in the world. We're talking about a city where the median home price has historically been more than 20 times the median household income. Young professionals, working families, they've been priced out for years. So the government stepping up land supply is, on paper, a move in the right direction.
On paper being the key phrase. The timing here is critical. Authorities specifically noted that this land sale program comes after what they describe as the property market having stabilized. Now, let's unpack what stabilization actually means in Hong Kong's context. After years of sky-high prices, the market saw significant corrections. Developers have been cautious. Transaction volumes dropped. So when the government says stabilized, they're really saying prices have stopped falling enough that developers might actually want to buy land again.
And that raises the fundamental question, who does this program actually serve? Because releasing land for private developers to build flats doesn't automatically mean affordable housing. These developers are profit-driven entities. They're going to build what the market will bear, which in Hong Kong typically means premium and luxury units that the average resident still cannot afford.
Exactly. The supply-side argument has always been that more units will bring prices down through competition. But Hong Kong's housing market doesn't operate like a textbook economics model. You've got enormous wealth flowing in from mainland China, you've got speculative investment, you've got developers who have every incentive to drip-feed units onto the market to maintain pricing power. Simply releasing land doesn't guarantee the flats built on it will be accessible to the people who need them most.
And we should note the broader political dimension here. This announcement came as part of the latest budget, which means it's as much a political signal as it is a housing policy. The government is telling the public and the business community that it believes in the market's recovery, that it's confident enough to push supply. Whether that confidence is warranted or whether it's wishful thinking designed to boost sentiment, that remains to be seen.
The people who benefit most immediately are the major property developers. They get access to prime government land. The people who are supposed to benefit, ordinary Hong Kong residents looking for somewhere to live, will have to wait years to see if any of this translates into homes they can actually afford. It's a pattern we've seen repeated across expensive cities worldwide. Governments announce big supply numbers, developers build for the high end, and the affordability gap persists.
We'll be watching those 9 sites closely to see what actually gets built and at what price point. Now let's shift gears dramatically, from the ground to the sky. Maya, this next story feels like it was pulled straight out of a science fiction novel.
It really does. Archer Aviation, one of the leading developers of electric vertical takeoff and landing aircraft, or eVTOLs, has announced what it's calling an industry-first collaboration with SpaceX's Starlink satellite internet service. According to Electrek, Archer plans to integrate Starlink's high-speed internet connectivity directly into its Midnight air taxi aircraft.
So let me make sure everyone understands what we're talking about here. Archer is building electric flying taxis. Small aircraft that take off and land vertically, like a helicopter, but powered by electric motors. They're designed for short urban trips, think airport to downtown, and they're quieter and cleaner than traditional helicopters. Now they want to put Starlink internet inside these things.
And the immediate application is providing passengers with high-speed internet during their flights, which makes sense from a premium service standpoint. But the real headline buried in this announcement is the long-term implication. Having persistent, reliable, high-bandwidth satellite connectivity on board could eventually enable autonomous flight operations. We're talking about pilotless air taxis.
Let's slow down on that, because the autonomy angle is where this gets both exciting and concerning. Right now, eVTOL aircraft are designed to have human pilots. The FAA certification process that Archer and its competitors are going through is based on piloted operations. But the economics of air taxi services fundamentally change if you remove the pilot. Pilot salaries, training, scheduling, all of that cost disappears. The margins improve dramatically.
And that's exactly why Starlink integration matters beyond just passenger Wi-Fi. For an autonomous aircraft to operate safely, it needs constant, uninterrupted communication with ground control systems. Traditional cellular networks have gaps, especially at altitude and in transitional zones between cell towers. Starlink's low Earth orbit satellite constellation can theoretically provide that seamless coverage, making real-time data exchange and remote monitoring viable even during flight.
But here's where we need to apply some investigative scrutiny. Archer Aviation is a publicly traded company. Its stock ticker is ACHR. And like many eVTOL companies, it has been long on promises and short on revenue. These companies have been announcing partnerships, milestones, and future capabilities for years while burning through cash. A splashy announcement about Starlink integration generates headlines and potentially moves the stock price, which matters when you're a company that needs continued investor confidence to survive.
That's a fair point. We should note that Archer has made genuine progress toward FAA certification of the Midnight aircraft, and the eVTOL industry as a whole is moving forward. But the gap between announcing a Starlink collaboration and actually operating autonomous air taxis carrying passengers through city airspace is enormous. We're talking about regulatory hurdles that haven't even been written yet, public acceptance challenges, and technical reliability standards that go far beyond what any satellite internet provider has been asked to guarantee.
And there's the SpaceX angle. Starlink is becoming the default connectivity layer for an increasing number of industries, from maritime shipping to airlines to now air taxis. Elon Musk's satellite constellation is embedding itself into critical infrastructure across multiple sectors. That level of dependency on a single private company's network should raise questions about redundancy, pricing power, and what happens if that relationship sours or the service experiences outages.
The vision of autonomous electric air taxis connected by satellite internet is compelling. But the distance between vision and reality is measured in years of regulatory approval, billions in additional investment, and safety records that haven't been established yet. We'll report on the progress as it happens, not just the press releases.
Perfectly said. Now, from the future of transportation, we turn to one of the most complex geopolitical stories unfolding right now. India's growing influence in Afghanistan under Taliban rule.
This is a story that challenges a lot of assumptions. Al Jazeera is reporting on the increasingly visible relationship between India and the Taliban government in Afghanistan, a development that has drawn sharp criticism from Pakistan. In fact, Pakistani officials have gone so far as to accuse Afghanistan of becoming, and I'm quoting here, a colony of India.
That's extraordinary language. To understand why Pakistan is so alarmed, you need to understand the historical triangle between these three nations. For decades, Pakistan considered Afghanistan its strategic backyard. Pakistani intelligence, the ISI, had deep ties with the Taliban going back to the 1990s. Afghanistan was supposed to be Pakistan's sphere of influence, providing what strategists call strategic depth against India.
And India, for its part, had strong relations with the Afghan governments that opposed the Taliban. India invested heavily in Afghanistan during the post-2001 period when the US-backed government was in power. We're talking about billions of dollars in development aid, infrastructure projects including the Afghan parliament building, roads, dams, and scholarships for Afghan students. When the Taliban swept back into power in August 2021, the conventional wisdom was that India had lost Afghanistan entirely.
But that's not what happened. And this is the part of the story that deserves deep investigation. Rather than retreating completely, India appears to have pragmatically engaged with the Taliban government. The relationship has grown quietly but steadily. India has maintained some diplomatic presence, facilitated humanitarian aid, and most importantly, continued economic engagement.
And this is where Pakistan's alarm becomes understandable. The Taliban was supposed to be Pakistan's ally, a movement that Pakistan helped nurture and shelter for 20 years. But the Taliban, now that they're actually governing a country, have their own interests. They need economic partners, development assistance, and international legitimacy. India can offer all three in ways that Pakistan, struggling with its own economic crisis, increasingly cannot.
Let's be honest about what's really driving this. The Taliban government is desperate for international recognition and economic lifelines. Their country faces humanitarian catastrophe, with millions on the brink of famine. India, as the world's fifth largest economy and a rising global power, represents a valuable partner. The Taliban's willingness to engage with India despite historical enmity shows just how much realpolitik governs international relations, even for ideologically driven movements.
And for India, the calculus is straightforward. Maintaining influence in Afghanistan serves multiple strategic objectives. It gives India a presence on Pakistan's western border, complicating Pakistan's strategic calculations. It provides access to Central Asian trade routes. And it positions India as a pragmatic power that can engage with any government, regardless of ideology, when its national interests are served.
But we shouldn't romanticize this relationship. The Taliban remains one of the most repressive governments on earth. They've effectively banned girls from secondary and higher education. They've imposed severe restrictions on women's participation in public life. India's engagement with the Taliban, however strategically rational, means engaging with a regime that is committing what many international observers consider systematic gender apartheid.
That's the uncomfortable tension at the heart of this story. India positions itself as the world's largest democracy, yet it's building bridges with a theocratic movement that denies half its population basic rights. Pakistan, for all its criticism of India's Afghan engagement, is itself dealing with its own democratic deficits. And the Afghan people, especially Afghan women and girls, are caught in the middle of a great power competition that has very little to do with their welfare and everything to do with strategic advantage.
The accusation that Afghanistan is becoming a colony of India is hyperbolic, but it reflects a genuine shift in regional power dynamics that Pakistan finds deeply threatening. We'll continue to follow this story as it develops. Now, Maya, let's shift to something a bit more tangible. What actually happens when an electric vehicle is involved in a serious car crash?
This is one of those stories that cuts right through the noise and the fear-mongering that has surrounded EVs since they entered the mainstream market. CleanTechnica is reporting on a real-world incident from January 8 of this year involving a man named Ron Mail, who was driving a BYD Seal when he was caught in a four-car pileup.
And this wasn't a fender bender. This was a serious, multi-vehicle collision. His BYD Seal was the first vehicle in the chain, struck from behind by three internal combustion engine vehicles, a Great Wall, a Mazda, and a BMW. From the reporting, the Mazda essentially became the crumple zone in the collision, absorbing much of the impact energy.
Now, here's what makes this story newsworthy beyond the crash itself. EV skeptics have been pushing a narrative for years that electric vehicles are ticking time bombs. That the batteries are unstable, that they'll catch fire or explode in a crash, that they're more dangerous than traditional vehicles. This real-world incident tells a very different story.
Let's talk about what we know about EV crash performance in general, because this incident fits into a much larger body of evidence. Electric vehicles, because of the way they're designed, tend to perform exceptionally well in crash tests and real-world collisions. The battery pack, which is the heaviest component, is typically mounted low in the vehicle's floor. This gives EVs a lower center of gravity, making them more stable and less likely to roll over.
And the structural design matters enormously. Because there's no internal combustion engine taking up space in the front of the vehicle, EV manufacturers can design much larger crumple zones. The front of the car can deform progressively, absorbing crash energy over a longer distance before it reaches the passenger cabin. That's physics working in the occupant's favor.
Ron Mail's experience in the BYD Seal appears to demonstrate exactly this. In a multi-vehicle pileup where traditional vehicles sustained severe damage, the EV structural integrity and safety systems performed as designed. The BYD Seal, it should be noted, has earned top safety ratings in multiple international testing programs.
But let's also address the battery fire concern head-on, because it's the number one fear that people cite when they express concern about EVs. The data is clear. Studies from agencies including the Swedish Civil Contingencies Agency, the U.S. National Transportation Safety Board, and multiple insurance industry analyses have consistently found that EVs catch fire at significantly lower rates than internal combustion engine vehicles. Traditional cars, with their tanks full of highly flammable gasoline, ignite far more frequently.
That doesn't mean EV battery fires don't happen. They do, and when they occur, they can be more difficult to extinguish, burning hotter and longer than gasoline fires. Fire departments worldwide have had to develop new protocols for dealing with lithium-ion battery fires. But the frequency is what matters for the average consumer making a safety assessment, and on that metric, EVs come out ahead.
What I find telling about this story is that it highlights a real person's real experience. Ron Mail was in a violent crash, and the vehicle safety systems did their job. These are the stories that need to be told to counter the misinformation campaign that has been waged against electric vehicles by interests that profit from the internal combustion engine status quo.
And let's be direct about who those interests are. The fossil fuel industry, legacy automakers who were slow to transition, and media outlets that generate clicks from sensational headlines about EV fires have all contributed to a public perception that is fundamentally at odds with the safety data. Every time an EV catches fire, it makes international headlines. Meanwhile, roughly 170,000 gasoline vehicle fires occur annually in the United States alone, and most never make the news.
The BYD Seal that Ron Mail was driving is manufactured by BYD, which is now the world's largest electric vehicle manufacturer by sales. The fact that a Chinese-made EV performed this well in a serious crash also challenges another narrative, that Chinese EVs are cheap and unsafe. BYD has invested enormously in battery technology and safety engineering, and incidents like this demonstrate that investment paying off.
Great point. Now, our final story tonight might seem like the lightest of the bunch, but I think it's actually one of the most significant. Maya, tell us about the wheel loader at Circle K.
Okay, so this story comes from Electrek, and it centers on what might be the most delightfully unexpected image of the year. An electric wheel loader, one of those massive construction machines used to scoop and move heavy materials, was photographed plugged in and charging at a Circle K convenience store.
And I love this story because it crystallizes something that's happening across the construction and heavy equipment industry that most people haven't been paying attention to. The electrification revolution isn't limited to passenger cars and trucks. It is reaching into the heavy machinery sector, the backbone of construction, mining, and infrastructure development.
Electrek makes the point that as more job sites move to electrify their heavy equipment fleets, one of the most common questions from outsiders is, where do these massive machines charge? People can picture a Tesla at a supercharger, but a multi-ton wheel loader? That seems absurd. And yet here it is, parked at a Circle K, plugged into what appears to be a commercial charging station, topping up its battery just like any other electric vehicle.
This is symbolic on so many levels. Circle K is one of the largest convenience store and fuel station chains in the world. They operate thousands of locations across North America, Europe, and Asia. The fact that a Circle K location has charging infrastructure capable of supporting heavy equipment tells us something profound about how far the charging ecosystem has come.
And it tells us something about where it's going. If construction companies can charge their equipment at public locations during transport between job sites, that removes one of the biggest logistical barriers to electric heavy equipment adoption. You don't need a dedicated charging depot. You don't need to run special power lines to every job site. The existing and expanding public charging infrastructure can serve these machines.
Let's talk about why electrifying construction equipment matters so much from an environmental and public health standpoint. Diesel-powered construction machinery is one of the most significant sources of urban air pollution. Those machines running on job sites in cities pump out nitrogen oxides, particulate matter, and carbon monoxide at alarming rates. Construction workers themselves suffer disproportionately high rates of respiratory illness from diesel exhaust exposure.
And the noise pollution dimension is enormous. Anyone who has lived or worked near a construction site knows the constant roar of diesel engines. Electric wheel loaders and excavators are dramatically quieter. That means construction can happen in urban areas with far less disruption, potentially even enabling extended working hours in areas where noise ordinances currently restrict construction to daytime only.
From an economic standpoint, the total cost of ownership argument for electric heavy equipment is becoming increasingly compelling. Electric motors have far fewer moving parts than diesel engines. Maintenance costs drop significantly. Electricity is cheaper than diesel on a per unit of energy basis. And the torque delivery of electric motors is actually superior for heavy equipment applications, instant maximum torque from 0 RPM, which is exactly what you want when you're scooping up a bucket of gravel.
The major equipment manufacturers have been moving into this space aggressively. Volvo Construction Equipment, Caterpillar, Komatsu, and others have all introduced electric or hybrid models. But adoption has been slower than in the passenger vehicle space, partly because of range and charging concerns, and partly because construction companies operate on tight margins and are cautious about switching to new technology.
Which is exactly why that image of a wheel loader at Circle K is so powerful. It takes the abstract question of, but how would you charge it, and answers it with a simple photograph. You charge it at the Circle K, same place you grab your coffee. The mundanity of it is the point. Electrification of heavy equipment is becoming normal, unremarkable, routine. And that's when you know a technology transition is truly underway.
Now, Alex, let's step back and connect these 5 stories, because there is a pattern running through all of them that I think our viewers need to see.
You're absolutely right. Let's start with the big picture. Every single story we covered tonight is, at its core, about the same thing, the collision between legacy systems and the forces of transformation. In Hong Kong, you have a legacy housing system built around land sales to developers, trying to address a modern affordability crisis with the same tools that created it. In the eVTOL space, you have aviation, one of the oldest and most regulated industries on Earth, being disrupted by electric propulsion and satellite internet.
In Afghanistan, you have legacy geopolitical alliances being scrambled by economic pragmatism. Pakistan's decades-old assumption that the Taliban was its proxy is crumbling because the Taliban has its own national interests that don't align with Pakistan's playbook. India, the supposed outsider, is stepping in because it can offer what Afghanistan actually needs.
And in both of our EV stories, the crash and the wheel loader, you have the tangible, physical reality of the electric transition smashing through the fear, uncertainty, and doubt that legacy industries have been peddling. A BYD Seal survives a 4-car pileup. A wheel loader charges at a gas station chain. These aren't press releases. These are facts on the ground that no amount of fossil fuel lobbying can erase.
The deeper pattern is about incumbency versus adaptation. In every one of these stories, established powers, whether they're Hong Kong property developers, traditional aviation companies, Pakistani intelligence services, or the oil and gas industry, are being forced to contend with a world that is changing faster than their business models can accommodate.
And the critical question for our viewers is, who controls the narrative around these transitions? Because in every case, the incumbents are working overtime to frame the change as dangerous, premature, or impractical. EVs are fire hazards. Flying taxis are science fiction. Engaging with the Taliban is colonial ambition. And releasing more land for developers is solving the housing crisis. The language used to describe these transitions matters enormously because it shapes public perception and policy responses.
What we try to do on this show, every single night, is cut through that language and look at the structural incentives. Who benefits from the status quo? Who benefits from the transition? And most importantly, who gets left behind in either scenario? In Hong Kong, it's working families who can't afford the flats that will be built on those 9 sites. In the eVTOL industry, it's the pilots who will eventually be replaced by autonomous systems. In Afghanistan, it's women and girls who are bargaining chips in a geopolitical game.
And in the broader energy transition, it's the communities that depend on fossil fuel extraction for their livelihoods, the workers who need retraining, the regions that need economic diversification. The transition to electric vehicles and electric heavy equipment is happening. It's happening fast. And it's happening whether legacy industries like it or not. But how we manage that transition, who we protect along the way, that's the policy question that isn't getting nearly enough attention.
That's the work of investigative journalism, Alex. Not just reporting what's happening, but asking who it's happening to and who's making it happen.
That's all we have for tonight, folks. 5 stories, 5 windows into a world that is being remade in real time. From Hong Kong's land sales to Archer's flying taxis, from the Taliban's geopolitical chess match to an electric car surviving a pileup, to a wheel loader at a Circle K.
If these stories matter to you, and they should, share this broadcast. Talk about these issues with your friends, your family, your colleagues. The most powerful thing an informed citizen can do is stay informed and demand better from the institutions that shape our lives.
For Truth Report, I'm Alex Truth.
And I'm Maya Clarity. Stay curious, stay skeptical, and we'll see you next time.
Good night.